Good afternoon, everyone. I am very excited to be here with you today and to be the first lightning talk speaker up here with probably what is going to be the least technical talk you'll hear. So for those of you that did a little happy dance in your head when I said that, you were the ones that I was thinking of when I put this presentation together. So as Dana said, my name is Cathy Miron and I'm the CEO of eSilo. And every day, I'm in conversations with business leaders, helping them understand how their information systems are vulnerable to cyber attacks and other IT disasters. But because of the complex nature of business technology, it's abstract and it's difficult to explain. I always like to start with a comparison to a set of systems that everyone is familiar with. Most non-technical people think about their technology in a very simplistic way. They think about it in terms of the things that they see and touch, the servers and computers and mobile devices that they use, right? Their hardware, and then the apps that run on them, their software. And a lot of business leaders believe that as long as they secure those two categories of things, there's nothing more they need to do from a cybersecurity standpoint. They have nothing to worry about. But you and I know better. We know that we have to secure our networks and the data that is traversing them, and multiple back-end components that run behind the scenes and are essential to a high-functioning IT environment, even though our end users never see them. And what is getting pumped through all of those systems, in between and across them? It's data. So the idea that I want to convey is that data is the lifeblood of modern business. It drives all of our business intelligence and decision-making, all of the inputs and outputs of our systems and processes. And like blood in the human body, it holds the evidence of everything we do. And what do I mean by that? Just like human blood work reveals if you've eaten too much sugar, drank too much alcohol, or if your immune system isn't functioning, your organization's data can tell you if you're not efficiently using your resources, if your error rates are too high, or if there's suspicious activity that you haven't actioned within your network environment. Our data is a logical representation of everything that has happened in our business, every transaction, every sale, every customer interaction. And I'm in the business of protecting data. So unlike some of the other speakers you've heard today and that you'll hear later on, I don't consider myself a data scientist. I just run a company that specializes in helping small businesses protect their business and information by avoiding and then also recovering quickly from cybersecurity incidents and disasters. So honestly, as I was thinking about how to share with all of you what we do and the role that data science plays into it, I realized two things. First is that over the last 3.5 years, data visualization has been one of the biggest game changers for me in our business. It's probably the most impactful thing that we've done other than partnering with Veeam for their backup and replication expertise. And beyond that, it really has been the advances in data visualization that have changed the way that we run the business from the inside out, helping to make what was previously unseeable now become seen. And it lends this graphical representation to what's happening in real time, and it allows us to correlate different events across different areas of our tech stack. We can now pinpoint bottlenecks, see cause and effect, and have time to plan for and optimize for our own growth and performance. The second thing that I realized is that as a field, data science has a perception problem. Data science sounds hard, technical, and complex. And if you've never met a data scientist before, it's hard to know what to expect, what the job actually requires, and how you can see yourself breaking into this field. And there's not that many data scientists out there, let alone ones who are women or who are diverse. And I believe that this only exacerbates the recruiting challenge in attracting young girls to join our field. Because as they say, you can't be what you can't see. So my goal for the next 10 minutes or so is to share with you my story about how I've applied data science principles in every aspect of my business and career, including my own journey to entrepreneurship. And hopefully this inspires the next generation to get into the field, because it's never too late to pick up a new skill. And one more thing on that, I don't see data science as purely a career, although it's great if you choose that for your profession. But I believe that it's an important business and life skill, just like knowing your numbers and knowing your finances. Every business leader today and tomorrow needs to understand how to make sense of the data that's at their fingertips. So let's get started. 18% of data scientists in the US are women. And certainly we need that number to be higher. But I also think that measuring it by careers is a bit of a narrow way at looking at the stats for this field. And as I said before, I'm not a data scientist, but I've found that applying these principles to problem solving has made a huge impact throughout my career. And even mainstream media recognizes this problem and is getting into the game to encourage more young people to get into the field. Unlocked is a new show on the Peacock Network. It's basically a cleverly designed 30-minute commercial for HP devices, disguised as a TV drama with an element of audience participation. So if those of you remember the Choose Your Own Adventure books that you might have read as a child, it's a little bit like that. So the show's characters have to solve a series of problems, and you as the audience can play alongside them by downloading the data sets and following the instructions on the show's website, so you can do all of the number crunching in real time along with the characters. And I think it's a really smart way to get people to try something new and something that they might not otherwise have ever thought that they could do. Just like me as a kid, I never thought I would be an entrepreneur or a CEO, but here I am. And I love this Venn diagram because it shows the three main disciplines of data science and that they're not all technical. My on-ramp was from the business side, understanding what happens, why it happens, and how should it be done? Can it be done better? And I don't want to speculate too much, but I think that we have a pipeline problem because a lot of young girls see data science as something that's overly complex. They don't identify with it. And data science, like all other sciences, can be intimidating. You know, kids don't always get exposure to this in school the way they do biology and physics. I know when I was in college, data science was not yet a career path. It wasn't even a major. So I could study computer science, statistics, or math, and I did take those courses, right? And I also took finance and accounting, and ultimately a course about SQL databases. That was the closest I could get to any kind of analytics instruction. But all of those formed the basis of the data science and problem solving that I use now in my career. So here's how I've leveraged that learning and approach to the world around me when I took over eSilo. So I spent the first 14 years of my career at a multinational conglomerate, a Fortune 10 company. And it was a really big transition to go from that to a small business that helps other small businesses, right? It's a much smaller scope, but a deeper dive. And the competition comes from everywhere. And so it's one thing in my space to say that we offer data protection and cybersecurity. It's like saying that we offer great customer service. Every other competitor in my field says the exact same thing. And so our prospective clients want to know not just what we do and how we do it, but more importantly, why should they choose us over anyone else? And everyone who's a service provider knows that you never want the answer to be because you're the cheapest. So when I took over, I realized that we had to have a special sauce. I wanted to discover what that was, right? What is something unique that we do that nobody else does? And when I took over the business, we were a backup company. We didn't yet do assessments and consulting or training, just backup, right? Data backup. And backup is a commodity. So my challenge was figuring out what would make us special. Why would we be a better fit for your law firm, your medical practice, or your manufacturing operations? And maybe, I thought, just maybe, it's because we had seen a lot of businesses like yours before. When you have the operational data on many of the same types of businesses, right? Golf and country clubs, as an example, financial advisors and accountants, specialty medical practices, lawyers and law firms, you start to see many of the same things over and over. So, for example, in the golf club industry, there are really only 2, maybe 3 club management software platforms that anybody runs. It's sort of like Oracle and SAP. If you know those 2 platforms and can support them, you have 98% of the market as your potential customers. So I started wondering, what could we do with all of this data? Could we give them advice, like a Netflix recommendation? People like you also like this or do this. Or industry benchmarking. Others in your industry have twice the number of repeat clients. Here's some ideas for how you can boost your numbers. And I also started thinking about how we could predict who was at the highest risk for a system outage or a cyber attack, any other issue that would increase their need for and the value of the offsite backup services that we were providing. But there are some obvious challenges with this, namely that the data that we collect from our customers is NPI, non-public information. How do you apply data analytics and data science when you can't aggregate or scrub or anonymize the information sets that you want to use? Our clients willingly give us their most sensitive data, and we're bound not to use it for any other purpose than what they gave it to us for, which is secure storage. So not to mention the fact that it would be really challenging and difficult for us to even try to aggregate all that data in the first place, and we'd face a whole host of legal issues if we were even to try. So I realized very quickly that analytics based on any kind of client data was out, right? So I went back to the drawing board. And in my career, everything that I have done, I've always approached learning something new as a process. I have to illustrate it in my mind as a process. So inputs, processing, and outputs. So if we couldn't use customer inputs to gain those valuable insights, what other inputs could we use? Our own. And so one of the things that I have always found challenging about working in technology is that everything is abstract, it's intangible. It's concepts and logic and things that are very difficult for someone like myself who's a visual learner. I picture everything in my mind. And this is especially true about our back end, which is all Linux. It's 100% command line. There's no GUI to fall back on. There's nothing for me to see when I sit down with my engineers and say, show me what our back end infrastructure looks like. And I know that Linux is the best platform for us. It allows our engineers to be efficient and flexible, and we've actually worked in some of our own eSilo specific utilities into the operating system that makes every backup server we build that much faster and easier and better to do. And it allows us to run ZFS on our backend storage, which is a very highly resilient file system. It's an advanced file system with very unique qualities suited for high integrity computing environments. And so it does all these great things under the hood, but it also means that it's difficult to picture and understand when you're learning it for the first time, and it's also very demanding on your performance. And so just like any other technology company, we have all kinds of dashboards and charts and basic things. Our machines up or down, our services running or not, or how many jobs succeeded or failed last night. And that level of insight might be sufficient when you're just monitoring your own internal environment, when there's a level of uniformity and predictability to the systems and how they behave, and when your demand and everything else is relatively static, sort of like the picture up here on the left, right? If you've ever worked in enterprise IT, and we're here at the wonderful NextEra Energy Resources, or at an MSP, a managed service provider, you know that to support systems at scale, you need consistency. But the challenge of being a service provider is that nothing is consistent, nor do you control much of anything, right? You're just the recipient of things. So for us, our clients, we don't manage the endpoints, which are all the servers and VMs and workstations that send us their data. They're all running different operating systems, running different apps. We don't control what they send, when they send it, or how we receive it, all of those different unique settings of their jobs and policies. And so we call this the problem of the thundering herd, that you have to manage your infrastructure and your business model in a way to accommodate these dramatic ebbs and flows in traffic. And so you can have a flood of inbound data at any point in time, right? Without an ability to shape it as it comes in. So as you can imagine, this inevitably leads to performance challenges. Now, the first thing you might be wondering is, well, with cloud, right, this problem starts to go away. But the thing about our business is that a lot of our clients are still not yet comfortable putting their data in public cloud because of the sensitivity and the highly regulated nature of their businesses. So they share their data with us in our own private cloud. And so from a performance challenge point of view, if you under-provision your infrastructure, you're just wasting money. It's like flying a half-empty airplane. But if you try to over-optimize and fly too close to capacity, you find that things will slow down disproportionately fast. I'll tell you a quick story. Back in May of 2021, when the mid-pandemic growth was in full swing, almost out of nowhere, we noticed that our back-end systems were getting bogged down. It was like our usual fire hose of data was getting siphoned through a garden hose. Drip, drip, drip. And our client jobs began to queue. and jobs that were already in flight were getting slower and slower. And we could tell the systems were doing something, but we weren't exactly sure what. And so we saw this flood of inbound connections, but nothing was passing through. And what we discovered later with the help of analytics was that it wasn't that we were victim of a distributed denial of service attack, a DDoS attack, or some other nefarious thing as you might expect, but that we had our own back-end cleanup jobs that were doing very I/O intensive work, purging old discarded data that had fallen out of our clients' backup sets, that triggered this exponentially high volume of read and write operations to disk, right at the same time that our customers happened to be in the middle of the day sending us a flood of information. And so that activity, thousands of reads per second, right, by our internal destroy and purge operations, coupled with backup activity of thousands of writes per second from our customers, it was like a traffic jam at a busy intersection and nobody could get through. And so the solution was really simple. It was better analyzing the trends in which our clients were sending us their information and being able to predict, or I'm sorry, not predict, but to understand where were clusters of activity. Because those clusters didn't happen when you would think they would, right? People weren't just running backups overnight. They were doing a whole bunch of stuff in the middle of the workday. And once we understood that, we could easily plan our back-end work accordingly and take advantage of natural lulls and just be more intelligent in the way that we throttled all of that work. And one of the tools that helped us do that is something called Grafana. And it helped us really see and understand client activity that we had never really understood before. This idea of seeing information over time in a time series helped us see peak activity times and when we should sequence our own back-end operations, and to pick out these patterns and trends and look at them over days and weeks and months. So now we easily have hundreds of graphs that help us analyze and connect the dots between all the different layers of our tech stack, from the most front-end customer-facing things to the most back-end infrastructure things. And we're smarter in the way that we operate the business because of it. And in doing so, we've learned to recognize new patterns. And so, for example, this chart, which I realize red and black is a little hard to read, is a chart in the change of data for one of those country clubs that I mentioned, running one of those two large ERPs. And we can see how that differs from the pattern of data for a dental office, running one of about 5 or so platforms that we see in the dental field. And how that looks different than workstation data coming from teachers and administrators in a series of schools. That's much more sporadic. And how that compares to the data from a hosted IT provider who is managing servers and applications for a portfolio of their clients, but clearly has certain weekly activities that they're performing. And it's because of these and other insights that we've been able to make proactive calls to our clients to inform them of unusual activity. Everything from, hey, it looks like you might have ransomware because of the data spikes, but also because we can see the encrypted file extensions that are associated with known ransomware strains in the data set that they've sent us, to more benign things like a power surge in the office or an air conditioning failure that leads to server temperatures to rise to dangerous levels. And that has been our secret sauce. Small businesses can't get the level of proactive alerting or service or insights from a big name vendor. They're simply too big to care. But we care, and we know that small business owners are busy and are happy to invest in a higher level of service because the consequences of missing something like this or getting it wrong are simply too great. So in summary, I want to leave you with 3 things. First is that good analytics has the potential to provide almost infinite value to organizations. Second is that data science is a skill. It doesn't have to be a career, but it can complement whatever career that you choose. And lastly, when you hit a roadblock or things don't turn out the way that you expect, don't get discouraged. Just go back to the drawing board like I did. It's often those early failures or setbacks that will help you find something far, far better. Thank you.